Welcome to this published author show. My name is Kenneth Muyingo, and with me I have a special guest that I will be interviewing. First, I just want to mention if you watch this interview and you would like to write a book yourself, to become an author and write your first book, there's a link with the interview for you to join the group, become an author, and write your first book. And with that said, I would like to get into the interview by asking my special guest to say hello to our viewers and listeners and to introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ralph Bryant. I am a writer and podcast host, reformed American, now living in Canada. And I host, created and host a podcast called Black Fathers Matter, which is focused on, my co-host and I are focused on trying to dispel many of the myths that we often hear about what it means to be a Black father, and to do it with humor. It's a tongue-in-cheek show. It's not for the faint-hearted. But it's a fun show. But and then just recently I published my second book, which is called Shackles Lost. And Shackles Lost is it's part of a series of books that I hope to that I'll continue, called the Poetry Mixtape series. And what it is what Shackles Lost is me coming to grips with trauma and abuse that I experienced as a child, and then trying to kind of recognizing that the impacts of our childhood last long throughout after that trauma is over. And so it's what I would consider is poetic memoir, because it's telling a version of my life story, but using poetic devices to do so. But there is also some prose in there as well. And it's ultimately it is structured in a way to know that even at your darkest moment, even when you're feeling at your lowest, that you can return from that abyss. So I'm excited for it was therapeutic for me to write it, and I'm excited for people to read it.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much, Wow, for making time for the interview. And you have quite a profile. So you said you are a writer, a podcaster, and a reformed American.
Yes, you can decide which one of those is most important.
So you said you're living in Canada?
Yes.
Aha, very nice. How's the weather? How's the weather right now?
So the weather is it's cold. There is no but not unusually cold. There's a myth about Canada that there are polar bears walking down the street and it's filled with just icicles, and we have seasons like every place else. There are parts of Canada that I wouldn't go to because it's that cold. But I live in Ontario, so literally just across the border between where I was from. I grew up in New York City, so I live a half an hour from the American border.
Amazing.
On the Canadian side.
I know parts of Canada that really get cold. I have a friend who lives there, and he visited me sometime here in the Netherlands.
Yes.
And we were in Amsterdam, and it was a cold day here, and he was just walking with his t-shirt.
Yes.
I'm like, maybe we should just get into a store and buy a jacket for you. He's like, no, I'm okay. I live in Canada. I was like, okay.
So I can top that story. So so my ex-wife and her sister go to the Swiss Alps, and they're there for a couple hours, and they're like, well, they're in t-shirts at the base of the Alps, and there's a funicular that will take you up to the top, and they're like, we're from Canada, how bad could it be? And so they go up there, and everyone's in boots and full like snowsuits, and there they are in t-shirts. So Canadian people can absolutely withstand cold in a different way. As I said, I am American living in Canada, so I don't have those genes. I haven't developed them.
I see. Wow. Thank you. And you mentioned a podcast, Black Fathers
Yes.
Matter.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that.
So, my co-host and I, Roy Kataha, have been friends for 12 years. We met here in Canada. He's also not from Canada. He grew up in Uganda and lived overseas before coming to Canada as a teenager. And so I think because of that, we bonded over the fact that we were, even though he's been here a much longer time than I have, still trying to kind of figure out our place in Canada. It's not a place where there are lots of people of color. It's a little so it can be feel a little bit isolating. And he and I were both working in the corporate world, trying to figure out kind of what our ultimate destiny should be. And that's how we ended up having these deep conversations about life and politics and about being fathers. And he and I would just be sitting in my backyard having these conversations. And at one point, we said, maybe this conversation is interesting. And that led to me kind of marinating over it for a few days and germinating the idea that became Black Fathers Matter. And initially, it was a very serious parenting podcast. It was, all of the subject matter was very focused on raising our kids and dispelling this myth around Black fathers. And at some point, what we realized, maybe like 5 or 6 episodes in, was that we weren't having any fun. It was too serious. It was very different from our actual personalities. So we wanted to do something that still felt like we were getting this message across, but felt authentic to us. So the podcast kind of began to evolve to where it is today, where it really is a conversation of 2 friends and 2 fathers talking about things happening in the world and connecting those back to being parents versus the way we were doing it initially, which was how parents are navigating the world.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm going to be checking this out. And you say your co-host is from Uganda.
Yeah.
What are the odds? I'm also from Uganda originally.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. Small world, huh?
He has a pretty crazy kind of route. He started in Uganda, you went to India, and then there's one more stop before he got here, which I can't remember, somewhere in Europe. And then ended up here. And one of the things we both have these unique stories, and so one of the things that we'll be working on in 2021 is writing his story. And that's something that we're gonna partner with together, because it's an incredible, like, his story is, I think I've had a rough life, and his story is incredible, and not too dissimilar from any immigrant story, right? Like, it's a hard road to get to Canada from someplace, anywhere overseas or anywhere in South America.
It's from Uganda, to be specific.
Okay, yeah, sure.
It's wow, that's amazing, Ralph. I would like to hear more about this journey, and I should be keeping in touch with you about this.
Excellent.
And so the other aspect of your profile is that you are a writer, and Shackles lost. I want us to spend the rest of our time together talking about this.
Okay.
Tell me about your journey as a writer. What inspired you to get into writing?
Okay, so the first story I ever wrote, I was 8 years old, and I developed a chicken pox, and I was stuck at home for 2 weeks, and my mother was a single mom, and she loved American soap operas. So because I was stuck at home for 2 weeks with the chicken pox, I had nothing else to do except in my afternoons spent the whole time watching American soap operas. And so her favorite soap opera was All My Children. And I then became obsessed with All My Children and watched it until I was in my 20s. Like it just was like a massive obsession. But at the beginning of this, so I had to come back from being out of school for 2 weeks. I had to have written a story. That was part of our assignment. It was specifically, I did have written a play. And so I wrote a play called All My Black Children as a spoof on the show All My Children. And you know, we went back to class eventually and gave it to my teacher, Mrs. Mactus, and she's like, this is really good. Maybe you're a writer. And that's how it started. So I would, like, almost every night I would sneak into, I'd wait till my family went to sleep, and I would sneak into the bathtub of our house, of our apartment in the Bronx, and I would write. And I would say most nights my mom would wake up in the middle of the night, see that I was in the bathtub, scream at me, and I'd end up having to go back to the couch that I shared with my brother, the younger brother. But that was where my love of writing started. And when I got to high school, I went to a high school called the Creative Writing Center. And it was one of these schools in New York. Didn't last very long. There's one of these schools in New York where you had to apply to get into. Yeah. And so I did, I got in. And so every 14-year-old kid that was in that class was a writer. And everything that we did was connected to writing. So if we were taking a science class, you had to write something for your science class. It was an incredible experience. Yeah. And by the time I graduated, I knew that the only thing I wanted to do in my life, the only two things I wanted to do in my life was to write and to travel. I wanted to get out of New York as fast as I could, and I wanted to write books and screenplays, and I just wanted to be immersed into writing. And no matter what has happened in my life, I've run away from writing multiple times, and it has always pulled me back. And so the germinations for Shackles Lost started when I was 13. Now, when I was 13, I was sexually assaulted by two men in a parking lot, and that is still the most seminal moment in my life. And what that did is that all of these dreams, even though I was kind of outwardly talking about my dreams and passionate about them, and I had all of these goals and things I wanted to do, there was this voice inside of me saying, you can't do those things. You're not worthy of those things. You have no power, no value. And so I lived a lie for a really long time to not let people know that inside I was falling apart. And so that led to eventually me being after I moved here. This is a struggle that lasted my entire adult life. And it culminated with me being hospitalized in a mental institution 2 years ago. Wow. And completely incapable of kind of managing kind of my feelings and emotions. And I could feel myself struggling and asked for help, and I went to therapy, and I got on medication, and I did all of these things to try to make myself better. But nothing worked really. And I should point out that I am a third generation sufferer of mental illness. My mom was diagnosed as a teenager and was hospitalized, and her mom was diagnosed as a teenager and hospitalized. So there was always this concern in the back of my head that I needed to be really mindful and take a lot of care of my mind, for this worry that this family history would come back to get me. And even with that, I couldn't stop it from happening. And so Shackles Lost is a way for is a book that's designed to take you through that journey poetically and help. It started out initially as my own therapy, and then because it was very difficult and still remains very difficult for me to speak openly about my journey. But I think what I've accepted is that I'm gonna have to speak through it for me, right? Everyone's journey is different, but I'm going to by releasing these feelings kind of out into the universe, I am also hoping that I'm releasing myself from the trauma of living with it.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's very
I hope that
powerful
answered your
journey.
question.
Yes, it did answer my question and more. It is a very powerful journey that you've been on. And also, I just want to commend you for your courage and for not allowing this journey that you've been on to just sort of like but you've decided to document it for yourself. I was interviewing somebody a couple of days back, and they said something during the interview that really stuck with me, that the book that most changes your life is the one that you write yourself.
Yeah.
And I sense that that's what you're saying as well, that you started writing as your own therapy to just make sense of what happened.
Yeah.
At what point did you realize that there's something here going on that is just more than Ralph?
Sorry,
It's all right.
Wow.
It's all right. Take your time.
So I have two children. I have a 12-year-old, a son that's about to be 12, and a son that's about to be 10. And what I started to worry about is my oldest son was showing some of the signs. I was seeing a lot of myself in him, as all parents do.
Yeah.
But what I worried about was that one of the things that was always difficult for me was saying the hard thing.
Yeah.
Like and saying it like with no filter and 100% truth.
Yeah.
There's a piece of prose in the book called The Weight of Loss, and in it there's a section about how I've kind of dealt with my trauma as an adult, and one of the things that I did and still do and am trying to be better at doing is to lie and not tell the truth. Because in telling a version of the truth to make people happy, but not telling enough truth, because the truth is scary.
Yeah.
And I started sensing that in my oldest son, that he doesn't quite, that he's nervous and scared about showing his feelings. And when I think about my son, when I think about my childhood in And then think about he has had the benefit of every advantage that I never thought I had, that I never had, and never even would have considered to have. He lives in a great house. He's got 2 parents that, even though they're not together, they are active and committed co-parents for him. And still, he struggles with many that same internal fear.
Yeah.
And that was the catalyst that that there that this isn't just me.
Yeah.
That isn't. I'm not the only person in the world that has struggled with these things. And I had a friend of mine. So I have a group of friends that I send during this process. I had a group of friends that I send my pieces to. So no book. Initially, I wasn't writing a book initially. I was just writing. Yeah. And a friend of mine, in response to the book, said, in response to this one piece, was like, I can't read it. I had to stop reading it. And I was like, my initial reaction was, oh, okay, well, I guess it wasn't very good. And she was like, no, it was too much. Wow. It made me remember my own trauma. Yeah. It made me think about the time when I felt low, or I was stuck in a depressive state. And it was too much for me to take. Yeah. And it was those 2 moments combined that made me go, I think there's something else happening here that I want to I want to explore further.
Amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, there was those two moments, and even still, I wasn't sure that. I cannot tell you how difficult it is to have gotten to the point where I'm talking to you.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I can feel you. You are speaking right to my heart. Thank you so much for your willingness to share and your vulnerability. It's amazing. It's a pure sign of strength. That's what I've understood from my own journey, that sometimes society has labeled it as weakness, but I've realized it takes great strength. It takes great courage for somebody to be open and to share about their own journey and experience. And for that, I applaud you.
I don't feel like I have much of a choice. And I don't know. So let me try to unpack that. I don't love all of my writing, right? Like I don't know how you feel like when you write something, like, I don't know, is that good? Is that good? I don't know. But there were moments when I was reading through when I first had the printed version in my hand, that I thought, I have only thought it once. This means something. Yeah. Now, maybe it means nothing. It may mean nothing to anyone else. Right? Yeah. It may not mean anything to anyone else, but this means something to me.
Yeah.
And I wonder if, why do people write? Right? Like why do writers write? Because they have a story to tell and it pains them. It's burning a hole in their chest until they release it. Or do writers write because they want to be, being a writer seems like a glamorous job to have, and you just want to, kind of live the life, and you're thinking of the kind of nostalgia of old school American writers like Ernest Hemingway sitting in a bar smashing away at a typewriter. Like, we all come to writing in different ways. For me, it is the only thing that gives me peace.
Wow.
It's the only thing that like I've been in relationships, I've had kids, I've, had great jobs. Writing is the only thing that brings me peace. So I really don't, I can't help but think if I wasn't scared in my 20s or my 30s or my teens, and I really took the plunge, I don't know where I'd be as a writer. It's the only thing I think about sometimes. But people have said to me, you weren't ready to write that story.
Yeah.
This is a different thing. Maybe you would have wrote some things back then that would have been whatever they were, but this is where you are right now.
Indeed.
And 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 I and so I'm trying to that's a big struggle for me, is finding that balance between having wasted a lot of time, but I believe that I've been using that time living, and
Indeed.
ultimately it's going to make me a better writer.
Most definitely. I agree with you 100%. And what you just shared there, Ralph, is, it's very powerful, most especially about the journey that you have been on. And yeah, I'm just curious if somebody is watching this interview and they find themselves in that place of struggling with a childhood trauma, something that happened in their earlier formative years, that no matter what they do, no matter what they try, no matter what they attempt, no matter where they go, it's holding on to them like a monkey on their back. What can you share with them, knowing what you know?
Okay, so that's a great question, and this is I'm glad you asked it. Thank you. The most important thing to remember is that it's okay. That you're not a freak. You're not weird. You're not crazy. You're not insane. You're not any of those things. You're human, because the statistics show that there are more people who are struggling with some type of mental illness than not. So if you're struggling with something, it means that you are in the majority, not in the minority. So what do? I think first and foremost is you got to keep talking, and you got to find, and this is the hardest part about mental illness. The problem with mental illness when you're talking to people is that you have no wounds. You're not cut. You're not like physically injured. No one can see it.
Yeah.
And when you tell someone, hey, I'm just not feeling that great, it's often hard for someone to say, yeah, I get it. Oh, okay. And so when I was at my lowest point, I reached out to, just before I was hospitalized, I reached out to, I had this massive panic attack. And I reached out to a bunch of folks. Every friend, close friend in my contacts, and then I started reaching out to celebrities on like social media. Like I was really in a manic depressive state, and I couldn't control it, and I just felt completely and totally alone. And finally, one person reached out to me and said, I'm going to call the cops and they're going to come get you. But that was 9 hours from the time that I started, began my panic attack, to the time that I was picked up. Lots of things could have happened in those 9 hours, and only by the grace of God am I here. So if there is something that you can do, I think the most important thing is you need to tell any and everyone until you find someone that hears you, gets it, and will listen. If you don't have anyone in your immediate circle, then you might need to involve, you need to seek out a therapist or a counselor or someone locally that can help you. If you don't have any of those, every country has organizations and associations that are providing some type of no to low cost therapy, and it just requires you to do a little bit of digging, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But you have to keep asking for help until someone says yes, and know that it's okay. There's no quick fix. There's no thing like, okay, I'm feeling crappy. I call someone, I get on a medication and I'm good. The medication is is helping you acutely. You have to do the internal work to heal yourself.
Yeah.
The therapy and pharmaceuticals and counseling and all of the things that are provided externally are only great if you commit to it. And I am the best bullshit artist. So sorry.
It's all right.
I am the best at conning people.
Yeah.
So I con therapists all in Canada and the United States. I'm great at it. And it would make the therapist feel good, but I wasn't actually getting anything out of it that was really going to help me.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I said, I need to do this work myself.
Yeah.
I can't allow therapy should be here to support what I'm doing, but it can't be. No therapist is going to heal me completely if I am not ready, willing, and able to do the work to be healed. And so it was, and this honestly has been the greatest gift of the COVID pandemic, because I live alone. I see my kids. I would share custody with my kids, so I don't even see that my kids very much. I would say I've spent most of the last 8 months since we first closed down, 75% of that time by myself. And so I've only had my thoughts and my pen. And I handwrite all of my writing. I've gone through 7 notebooks.
Wow.
Since coronavirus. I think I've written 4 books. I mean, Shackles Lost is published. There are 2 more books in that series that need to go through a heavy edit now. But by the end of 2021, I will have released 2 additional books. And because all I've had to do was it was like I was having a fever, and these words and these thoughts and all this stuff was pouring out of me. And I have this like crazy opinion about writing and where it comes from. It's so crazy. I'm gonna warn you before I say it.
Go for it.
Okay. I don't believe that we write. I believe that writing is a gift from the ancestors. And there are nights when I write things and I wake up the next day and have read them, and I don't remember writing it. I believe that writers and whether poets, maybe especially poets, but I think all writers that do it seriously tap into something that's deeper. Right? If you've ever written something and you've closed your eyes to try to like remember what the thing you're describing smelled like, or what was the sounds around, what did it feel like, those are tapping into something that's visceral, that's bigger than you. Okay. And today I woke up, so I hadn't written anything in 3 days. I was very tired. The book was published and I've been out of sorts since then. And I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe this is it. Maybe there's nothing new to say. And I was like, okay, fine. And then I just like write about the block. It's like, okay, I'll write a paragraph about the fact that I can't write. 7 pages later.
Wow.
Okay, sure. Now, it doesn't have to be good.
Yeah.
This is the great thing. This is I mean, the most fascinating thing about writing that someone said to me is I'm going to connect it back to your beginning.
Yeah.
Everyone's got a story to tell.
Yeah.
Now, whether it's a good story or bad story completely doesn't matter, because that's the writing.
Yeah.
Right? Now, we put all kinds of blocks on ourselves. Can't write because I don't know how to spell. Can't write because I don't know, I'm not a good writer. I was just never good at writing in school. All of those things. Writing is not, who's gonna buy my book? Writing is none of those things. It's none of those things.
That's right.
All it is I have something to say that is burning in my heart. And if I don't say it, I'm gonna lose my mind. Now, did it say that I have punctuation burning in my heart? No. Did it say I have a semicolon? No, it's just a story. So to anyone who's got a story that's sitting on their heart, and I was an English major in university. I knew that I wanted to be a writer. I've written professionally as a ghostwriter, and I've done a lot of writing in my life, but almost none of it was for me. And so if you've got a story to tell the story. You can find someone to make sure the commas are in the right place. You can find someone to make sure that your plot structure and all of the technical aspects of writing that I'm not very good at. Personally, I'm not a technical writer like that, right? But I can write from I can write from emotion. I can write. I can bang out a first draft of anything very quickly.
Amazing.
For me, the writing comes after.
Yeah.
It's the like I can throw a lump of clay onto my notebook.
Yeah.
That's not right. That to me is the easy part.
Yeah.
Where I struggle and have had to work hard at being good at is taking that clay and molding it and shaping it and romancing it until the point where it becomes the thing that I really, really meant to say. And I'm sometimes pretty amazed at I try to keep all my drafts. I'm pretty amazed at how crappy some of my initial drafts are to the finished piece. Extraordinary. And so that to me is the fun part of writing. And I think that that's something that anybody could do.
Oh, yes. That's very well said. And what you mentioned at the start, that you don't believe that writing, that what we come up with as writing is actually from us. I've had this more than once. There's several people that have mentioned this. I was having an interview with somebody else, and they said the book came to me. It was literally like downloaded to me, and I just started writing, and I couldn't stop. And I was like, I see that. And I was having another interview with somebody else, and they were talking about the same thing. And I had somebody else say sometime that they just happened to be the first person who read their book. And I was like, wow. So the book came to me, and I just happened to be the first person who read the book. So here it is. And so very well said there. And looking at where we are right now, Ralph, with COVID-19, 2021 is here.
Yeah.
But for some people, it feels like the 33rd of December, that 2020 didn't actually end, and they're still in this tough time.
Yeah.
What can you share with them, knowing what you know and how you have been coping with the journey and the times?
Yeah. there's a quote from a movie. Maybe the quote comes from a song, but it's not a movie that anyone. It's not a classic movie, but it's this movie called The Crow that came out in the 90s, early 2000s, and this one character says to the other character, "It can't rain all the time," and that to me is something that has become a bit of a mantra for me.
Yeah.
It is that because there are days when I wake up and I don't have it.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about as a writer, I'm talking about as a human being.
Yeah.
I just don't have I don't have the drive. And on the days when I have the drive, I will push myself as hard as I can, because I know that around the corner from that, there's going to be a day when I just don't have it.
Yeah.
And what I have, the way that I've challenged that is allow myself to have those bad days. COVID, it's been happening for so long. We've all had to figure out how to cope.
Yeah.
We've watched all the shows that we really wanted to watch. We've eaten everything. We've cooked everything. We're many people are coping through destructive ways. So we're drinking more, we're smoking more, we're eating more, we're doing things that we know are definitely harming us.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I could say to that is that it can't rain all the time. This is going to end at some point. And what I would challenge people during COVID is to do this. Think about where you are in your, and this is what I've been doing, and I think is working for me.
Yeah.
Where are you where were you before COVID? And where are you during COVID? And really use this time to think about, where do you want to be? I think this is going to be a revolution. COVID's going to be a revolution in the way people think, in the way people live, in the way people work.
Yeah.
You think about the millions of people that have spent their lives working in offices during up before COVID, living in cities, congestion, all of those things. I think we're going to find people deciding to make different life choices to meet the quality of life they really want, or to live their purpose and their journey that they really want to do, but have been afraid to do it. And so what I think will happen, and what I would say is, make your plan. If you've got something that's been burning on your heart to do, like write a book, or be an actor, or make a friend of mine, random story. A friend of mine started to learn how to do needlepoint as a hobby during COVID. She's now selling these needlepoint designs all over the place. Right? I think there's going to be that. I think another friend of mine released an album. It's like, I've been singing for my whole life, and I never thought that anyone would listen to my album. And I was just, here singing by myself. And I met a friend of a friend who was a producer, and he said, look, I'll give you some beats and you can just sing in your house and then send them to me and I'll put them together. She released an album. Right? I think this is an opportunity to live the life, or to visualize the life that you've always wanted to live, and then make the decision whether or not you want to go for it. Because you might think about that and go, you know what, but my life's pretty good. I'm happy right here. And great. But if you're not, COVID shows us more than anything that life is short. And our time on this earth is small. And if you're doing something that's out of your purpose, then you should stop what you're doing and make a plan to live towards whatever your purpose is. And that's the part that's different for everybody else. For me, I'm changing everything about my life, changing where I live. I'm changing what I eat, so that I could live, at the minimum, spend the next year just writing. I'm selling, I live in a house. I'm getting rid of my house. I'm selling all of my stuff. I've purchased a van that I plan to travel across the country in and write. And I'm going to be on the road for a year trying to just commit with no kind of people around, no commitments around, just commit to being a writer. And then and hopefully I have 35 big writing ideas. And these are the ideas that are burning a hole in my chest. They're some of them are books, some of them are like little skits, but it's a rough
35.
list. 35.
Whoa.
Now, am I going to get to all of those before I die? Absolutely not. But I'm going to give it a great shot.
Amazing. Yeah. That's some powerful stuff, Ralph, man. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank
And
you.
and this was very inspiring. I'm so glad we made time for it.
Thank you. Me
Where
too.
can people buy your book, Shackles
Yeah,
Lost?
so Shackles Lost right now is you can buy on the ebook and paperback on Amazon. By the end of the week, by the end of next week, it'll be available across all platforms. You can also buy it directly from at our website, which is blackfathersmedia.com. And yeah, and if I my email, if people are interested, is ralphbryantwriter@gmail.com. I would love to and I say that also because if you're someone that is struggling with mental illness and you don't have someone, I'm here because I know what it's like to feel like you have no one. And I'm a reluctant warrior for this. Like, yes, I wanted to be a writer, but I didn't necessarily want to be a mental health advocate. But it is something that has become super duper important to me because of the story I mentioned about my son, and also the fact that I, for whatever reason, I believe somewhat, kind of designed by the ancestors, I have been tapped to and given the courage to do this work. And so if I can help, I know there's cliches. If you can help one other person, that would be great. I'm trying to help more than that because there are so many people that need help. So find local resources and yeah, and
Very
we'll
nice.
keep moving
We'll
forward.
put the link to the book with the interview so that people can buy them, and also your email. Is there another way that people can contact you
Yes.
besides your email?
Yeah. So I'm on Facebook. I'm at Ralph Bryant Writer. At Ralph Bryant Writer. And then on Instagram, I'm at Ralph_Bryant. And if people email me, my first book was a book called Lady Miss Sneezy's Most Unfortunate COVID Snot Assault, which is a super long title. You're not supposed to have titles that long, but it's a comedic book about one family's struggle through the coronavirus, through COVID. And I wrote that. I wrote it. It's an illustrated book. But it was a way to channel, because initially I was trapped at home like everybody, freaking out. What the hell am I going to do? And what started out as a little joke turned into this thing. And I found an illustrator that was really excited about it. And so we worked on it together, which is awesome. So we're giving that the ebook of Lady Miss Sneezy's Most Unfortunate COVID Assault away for free if you sign up for our newsletter. So if you connect with me in any of those ways, I will gladly send you out the link to get a copy of that book for free.
Very nice. We can put the link to the newsletter as well with the interview so that people can connect with that as well. It's some great stuff.
Yeah.
And this was wonderful, Ralph. Is there
Yes.
anything else that you would like to share that we have not been able to address in the interview?
You know, I think that uh, you, we only have one life, and you should live it to the way uh, that makes you happy. I will, you know, for people that are struggling, and even for people that are not struggling, they're just, you know, plodding along. I know for me, doing this, you know, finishing Shackles Lost and working on this process and living with this purpose of committing, I'm happy all the time. And I don't mean just like, I mean, I'm sad too, but the happiness I feel is a way that I cannot. I just didn't know that it was possible to be that happy.
Yeah.
It is extraordinary. It is an incredible gift that I've been given, and I want everyone to have that gift. And I wish I could just hand it. I wish I could just hand it to someone because it feels so. It feels so great
Yeah.
to be free of the you know, the history of trauma,
Yeah.
and so it may be scary, but I promise you, on the other side of that scary feeling is healing.
Thank you so much, Ralph. Brian,
Thank
this
you.
was very powerful and very inspiring. I'm so glad we made time for it. And I
I
will still be
appreciate it.
keeping in touch with you.
Okay, that sounds great, Kenneth. Thank you so much, and thank you for all of your listeners. And yeah.
You're welcome.